All right, so Nixon. This video is going to be about President Nixon's presidency. He gets elected when America's experienced a big, violent, horrible thing with race riots everywhere and stuff like that. People are protesting the Vietnam War. The country is in turmoil on all sides, and it's all happening at once. Okay, you got Vietnam plus the civil rights movement all exploding underneath Richard Nixon here. So it was a pretty rough thing. Now, this next quote, I hate this question because it has nothing to do with anything that you could be taught. Okay, whenever you were in elementary school, they used to say, you know, like, black is to blue as square is to blank, right? Okay, so it's like you have to make an analogy. Square would be, you know, the triangle or whatever. Okay, Nixon once said, television is to news as bumper stickers are to philosophy. Okay, what message was he trying to convey about television? All right, well, philosophy. That's the way, that's the thoughts you have about how we live and why we do things and all this kind of stuff, right? The ideas that you have that focus your being and, you know, and teach you how to live. Well, if you compare that to bumper stickers are pretty simple, right? So you got something very simple, something very complicated. So it says television is to news. He's talking about news on television, okay, and newspapers, as bumper stickers are to philosophy. So television is extremely simple, while the actual news that's going on in the world is very complicated. That's what he's saying. So what's the answer here? Okay, let's see. It's very shallow. Okay, television's very shallow. So that's what he's trying to say. All right. In the late 60s and early 70s, America experienced a number of cultural changes. This lady right here, this is Rachel Carlson. She wrote a book that really did shape a lot of stuff that's going on today in America. The environmental movement got pushed off by Rachel Carlson, and her book was called Silent Spring. Her point was, if we keep on using pesticides that are really bad for the environment, one day all the little bugs and critters that make our world tick, like honeybees and stuff like that, they would all disappear. And then once they disappear and all the plants disappear, then the animals disappear, and then we're all dead. Okay, one day we'll wake up to a silent spring. In other words, spring with no noise of the bugs. All right, something more entertaining. The British invasion of 1964. Okay, this is not Britain coming back to take over the United States. This is referring to music. Okay, and the biggest band in the British invasion was the Beatles. They became the #1 band in the world at the time with very big hits. They had hits all over the place. Okay, at one point, what was it? I think all four of their albums, their first four albums, debuted at #1 on the charts in America. And we had many other people coming over, like the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix. Those are all part of the British invasion of music. Okay? So, here we go. Very simple. In 1964, what cultural development was commonly referred to as the British invasion? Let's see. It's going to be something about music, right? All right. Prevalence of British bands on the U.S. music charts. Okay? Now, on the test, I've seen it where they're going to lie to you and say that Britain came back and tried to take over the United States, which kind of sounds correct if you hear something called the British invasion. Okay? That didn't happen since the War of 1812, by the way. All right, along with the British invasion, we have a new group of people called the counterculture. Okay, counter means it goes against. So counterculture are those that goes against culture. You have the beatniks in the 50s and the 60s, and by the 60s and 70s, you get a new group called the hippies. Okay, and the hippies liked drugs, rock and roll, and what they called free love, which basically means you can have, you know what I mean, with anybody you want, okay, and there will be no consequences other than STDs. But anyway, this is actually a famous character. His name is Tommy Chong, okay. He was part of a dynamic duo for a movie called Cheech and Chong, okay. Tommy Chong is still alive. He sells marijuana paraphernalia today. He actually ended up going to prison for about 2 years because he was selling bongs out of his house in California. By the way, which is not a crime. What the crime was that he sold them over state lines. Okay, he sold them to people that didn't live in California. We have Charlie Manson right here. Okay, Charlie was a singer and songwriter in the Los Angeles area, and he almost got a record deal. Okay, but he ended up not getting the record deal, so he killed the record company's president's girlfriend. Okay, which was a very famous lady. She was an actress. And then he, along with a bunch of other people that he dubbed the Manson family, went on a rampage killing many, many people. And Charlie went to prison for the rest of his life after that. Where from prison, he actually taught a college course. They would let him out to go teach this college course on serial killers, believe it or not. So anyway, that's Charles Manson. They all ended up in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco. Okay, it was called the Summer of Love, 1969, where basically hippies from all over America ended up going to the Haight-Ashbury district, which is an intersection of a couple of streets there. And what they wanted was to make a utopia, a communist-style utopia where everybody pitched in, everybody helped. But what ended up happening is you have a bunch of bums, basically, that went to Haight-Ashbury that were drug addicts, and nobody ended up working. So basically, the women would prostitute themselves to get their drugs, while the men would steal and do all. It deteriorated into a horrible situation very rapidly because communism doesn't work. Okay. Dr. Timothy Leary. Okay, this guy right here. He said, turn on, tune in, drop out. Okay, so we have to talk about that a little bit. This guy, while he was a professor at a school, okay, he was a very prestigious professor, in fact, he helped to do a lot of research in developing a new drug called LSD. Okay, so LSD is kind of like acid. You can make it using mushrooms. I'm not going to tell you how to make it, but anyway. So let's examine his statement. Turn on. He's talking about sexually. Okay, be with whoever you want to be. Free love, right? Tune in. He's saying take drugs to unlock your mind, to expand your mind. Okay, drop out of school, because what he's saying is that the schools have been basically training you to be an obedient servant and to be a productive member of society instead of being a unique individual. So Timothy Leary did not last long as a professor once he really got on drugs. And anyway, we'll get out of that. The birth of the hippie movement and the growth of recreational drug use, we talked about that. Okay, in the midst of all this, okay, the Summer of Love and all that, we have Woodstock. Woodstock is the most famous concert that ever was. Okay, this is 1969. It's not the biggest concert there ever was. There have been concerts where over 1 million people have attended. Okay, but this was not one. This is only a couple of 100,000. Now, the best acts from all over America, some of the British invasion bands came to Woodstock. Unfortunately, the Beatles did not make it there. The Rolling Stones couldn't make it either. But a few great acts actually did. Okay, Jimi Hendrix, number one. Jimi Hendrix caused a lot of controversy at Woodstock whenever he played the Star Spangled Banner in a very weird way as a protest song for Vietnam. Okay, no words. He just played it on his guitar as a protest song. Now, the way he did it was he used his guitar to make the sounds of bombs going off and machine gun fire and people screaming and stuff like that, with the idea that America's national anthem is war. That was his idea. So a lot of Americans wanted to kick Jimmy out of the country because he's British. He's not American. We got Janis Joplin. Okay. By the way, both of these two individuals died at the age of 27, along with a whole bunch of other really good musicians like Jim Morrison from The Doors, Kurt Cobain from Nirvana, and there's a few others, but they're not going to be on the test, so I'm going to leave it alone. But Jimmy died actually from a kind of drug and alcohol overdose. He had been on some drugs and he drank a lot, and he went to go sleep in his car, and he was in the back seat, and he was passed out and he threw up and he choked on it, and that's how Jimmy died. Janice died from alcohol as well. Okay, Jim Morrison died from a heroin overdose. Kurt Cobain died from a 12-gauge shotgun. So he did that to himself. Now, another guy, one that's still around that played at Woodstock, is this guy right here. He is the most famous Latin guitarist ever in world history, actually. His name is Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana has been around since Woodstock. He still plays, and he's still a very good guitarist. All right, here we go. Which attitude was not associated with the counterculture, that's the hippies, of the 60s? Support for the civil rights movement. Yeah, they would have liked that. Okay, support for foreign military involvement. No. Okay, hippies don't like war. All right, they're all about peace and love and harmony and all that stuff. All right, so that's about the hippies, y'all.